Hey, folks, I'm Rick Brusuelas, and with Joe Carlton, we host the Thursday Checkdown. Stealing a phrase from Dynasty League Football's website, there's never an off-season in Dynasty fantasy football. And tonight's show will have one of the top analysts in Dynasty football, Addison Hayes from Dynasty League Football. So welcome, Addison.
Sorry about
Hey,
that.
there you are.
Hey.
So we're welcoming you, and we're happy to have you with us tonight. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great over here. I appreciate you guys asking me to come on, and I was vibing out to the intro song there, and then you said one of the best Dynasty analysts, and I was like, boy, set me up pretty high over here. So hopefully I can deliver.
Well, it's a high bar, but no, I'm sure you're going to be delivering because I've watched you for years of different Dynasty football stuff that you've done on podcasts. And so, as I said, when we were just chatting before the show, I've been really looking forward to tonight since Dynasty is my favorite part of fantasy football. So, Joe, you want to start taking off?
Yeah, so before we get into the Dynasty football talk, we're gonna learn a little bit about you, Addison, your background, fantasy background, and whatnot. So, why don't you give us a little rundown where you live, if you want to talk about family, what you do outside of fantasy football, anything you want to share, really.
Sure. So I live in central Pennsylvania, not too far away from like the state college area where Penn State is, Penn State. So born and raised a Penn State fan, went to Penn State, graduated. So it's just the central PA vibes over here in between Pittsburgh and Philly. Nobody that's not from Pennsylvania knows where anybody lives if it's not Pittsburgh or Philly. We're Scranton from the office.
How far is that? How far is that from Hershey? I've been taking the kids to Hershey.
I'm 3 hours like northwest of Hershey.
Okay.
So it's and like the Harrisburg area down in there too. So it's like, look at the Pennsylvania map, point to the center, there you are.
Nice. All right.
So that's pretty much it. Outside of fantasy football, I don't really do all that much. I play golf. We have a 1-year-old now, so that's been our lives for the past year for my wife and I. And that's pretty much it. That's fantasy football is it. And it was a hobby, now it's a full-time job. And can't really say much more to that.
All right. So when did you start playing fantasy football? And you can even tell us about your first draft if you remember it.
Sure.
Or your first league, I should say.
Yeah. So I started playing fantasy football. That was, sorry if I make anybody feel old here, but I was in 8th grade back in 2010.
Oh,
I was in 8th grade in 1997, so you're definitely not making me
born in
feel
96, so I apologize.
I was pre-internet, so
Yep. So so I guess it was actually the fall of 2009, I guess. So the 8th grade year ended in spring of 2010. So fall of 2009, buddies in class said they're just going to get fantasy football league going together. If I was interested, I said sure. At the time, I was like playing Madden every single year. I was into sports and all that. So in preparation for the draft, I didn't really know anything about like who's going to be good for fantasy. So I just figured whoever's good in the NFL was good for fantasy. I literally had Madden 2008, and I was going through the Madden rankings of like their player ratings. And at the time, Drew Brees was one of my favorite players. I'm a Steelers fan, but I was a big Drew Brees fan as well because my cousins lived in Louisiana, so they were big Saints fans. And drafted Drew Brees in the first round. This was before the whole late round quarterback thing. Ended up winning that league, so instantaneously hooked. First year in fantasy football, won the league, instantly hooked. I went on to win that league 3 more years in a row. And then I have won it now 3 of the past 5 years. There's all these trophies back here behind me, except for the big one. That's my main dynasty league with all my friends here. But all these other trophies are all that one very specific home league that is still going on today. We've gone through different iterations of it. Started out like 8 teams on Yahoo. We switched to ESPN, and we went up to 18 teams one year. Now we're down to like a regular 12 team league, but we have like 3 wide receivers, 2 flex. We went through super flex, non-super flex. We've gone through IDP, head coaches, punters. we've done it all. And it's been very, very fun. It's a good way to keep a lot of the guys and friends from school back then together. And I just keep winning.
So you mentioned Dynasty, and so I'm sure, and you also mentioned IDP, which is great because I love IDP, especially Dynasty IDP. But what types of leagues do you play in, or what's your favorite type of league to play in?
Yeah, so it is still redraft and Dynasty. I don't really dabble into best ball that much, but it's pretty just standard redraft and standard Dynasty leagues. It's a pretty 50-50 split between the two, but at the end of at the end of everything, I'll probably have about 5 or 6 of them this year. So about 3 Dynasty, 3 redraft. And that's pretty much it. I tried, I can't do IDP anymore. There's way too much going on and I can't follow along with it. But there was a time, back 8-9 years ago, up until maybe about 2018, 2019, where I was in the full IDP as well. I was in a 32 team league that was full offense and IDP. It was about as mirrored to the NFL as it could possibly be. That was pretty crazy. Drafted Kareem Hunt that year and did pretty well, turning that orphan around. But yeah, I've run through the gamut of a lot of different stuff. But now I've cooled down, and it's just a couple redraft, couple Dynasty.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the same league that I'm in currently, where we have NFC and AFC teams, and it's full IDP. So it's a lot of fun. You start doing, crazy things in the rookie drafts, trying to gauge when to draft that first defensive player. But it's a lot of fun drafting with 16 other people. It's doubled up so that there's 2 16-team leagues. But
mine was a legitimate. We had 32 people.
Oh man, I would have loved seeing you draft running backs and tight ends and quarterbacks.
It was insane. Yeah, because it was I think it might have been even. I know that one wasn't a salary cap. That was just you just had to survive with the 32 teams in there. So yeah, if you were like 127, you were just like, I don't know what to do. You had like 5 or 6 rounds of rookie drafts, so we went pretty deep. It was pretty much the closest I've ever been to being an actual like NFL GM, and it was pretty fun.
Hey, you mentioned I guess you draft, or you have 8 managed leagues that you're currently drafting in. We usually try to ask that question because I usually try to keep the number hidden. If my wife is listening, I don't want her knowing I'm in 12 charity leagues and 7 or 8 dynasty leagues, 2 IDP leagues, 1 Debbie league, and she, she's seeing all the money flying out the door.
Money, it's the Tuesday night when you're in front of the computer for 7 hours doing waivers
every week. But, yeah.
But hopefully you win the leagues, or at least do well enough you can make some money back, and then all that money comes back into the account. You're like,
yeah. The last couple of years, I basically just did league safe with the previous year's winnings, so I'm not getting into too much trouble. Although this year, with all the charity leagues, it's not through league safe, so she's starting to see those ones. So we'll keep it on the down low.
It's for charity, good cause.
It is for charity, it's good cause, and best ball leagues don't count, so we.
Of course.
All right. So Addison, when did you decide you were going to get involved in the fantasy football industry as a content creator, helping people win their fantasy leagues?
Yeah, that was 2016, I think. Whenever throughout high school, one of the possible career options that I was exploring was being like a sports journalist. I was trying to help like write for the local paper here. And just like, I went to a couple media spots at Penn State with a couple guys that like actually were sports journalists for the paper here. So that was pretty cool. And that was the idea the whole time. I was thinking maybe I could like start up a blog or doing something like that for fantasy football. Then one night I just was like, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see what happens. So I literally on Twitter, I was already kind of involved. I was doing stat stuff, which my background is in statistics. So that's kind of the way that my fantasy football interest kind of moved into was more on the statistical side. So I was active on Twitter already. I was kind of like getting interested in joining some leagues, getting to know some people. And I just said, hey, is anybody taking on any writers? And Dynasty Football Factory was one of them. I reached out to them. He let me come on. His name is Michael, who ran DFF. I don't know if he's still there or not. But he brought me on, started writing. That was 2016, I believe. And then just from there, went to Rotoballer, started my own website, sold that website to DLF, and I've been with DLF since fall of 2019. So it's been about 10 years now.
Awesome. And you enjoy every minute of it, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's weird because now it's my full-time job. And so when we have some free time, if the baby's down or he's napping or whatever, and it's on the weekend, and my wife's just like, hey, I'm just gonna go do whatever. You can just go do something. And I say, cool, I'm gonna go work. And she's like, you don't gotta do work. It's like a Saturday. Come on. And I'm like, but I enjoy doing it's still my hobby. It just happens to be work now. So it's like,
I love that.
I
love that.
It's an interesting that she doesn't get it, but
Nice. So I just found this out the other night because I had JD on my Tuesday show, Aces Up podcast. Mm-hmm. You apparently were an original member of the GOAT District in the GOAT Dynasty League. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what you learned from it? Because I just hopped into the Dynasty League this year. It was part of a 6-team dispersal, and I was a little bit out of my league, I'm not going to lie, as far as Dynasty goes. Like a redraft, I trust my abilities against anybody. But I've only been in Dynasty 3 years. This is my 3rd season. I've done 1 startup. I have 2 orphans, and this was my 3rd orphan and my very first dispersal. So, I mean, I did okay, but like what these boys did in the rookie draft afterwards, and how active the trading was, and I was just like, wow, I guess I still have a lot to learn. So why don't you tell us about this?
Yeah. JD's awesome. The GOAT District pod and everything was phenomenal. And that league was insane. It was so much fun. I still look back on that, and that might literally be the best Dynasty league that I ever played in. It was just a shame that I had gotten to a point in my Dynasty career where you get infatuated with the game. So you're constantly joining new leagues, you're taking on orphans, you're doing more startups, you're doing all that stuff. I ballooned up to a point to where I hated setting lineups on Sundays. I hated checking waivers on Tuesdays. I started hating playing Dynasty because of the number of leagues that I was in. So I had to unfortunately cut down, and that one was on the docket, not because I wrecked the team or anything like that. And I didn't enjoy the league. It just, I was, as I'm shaving down, I do regret leaving that league because it was so much fun. I've never been in a league where there was that much activity and trades actually being done. Like not just like people being like, hey, I'll send out an offer and it doesn't get accepted. And then you wait a few days, then you get another email, and then like trades are getting done. Like these things you just send a trade and that dude might accept it. Like that's how quick and easy it was. We had an offseason, I think, where there were like 50 or 60 moves being done once MFL rolled over into the new year. In that like 1 month, there was like 50 or 60 deals that were done. It was absolutely insane. Everybody there was fantastic. I love that league so much. You're going to have such a fun time.
Well, I joined it so I could get better, really, because these guys are, Memphis Young. I traded with Memphis Young. There is nobody better at giving counter offers. Like I decline a trade, and then like not even like you said, 2 minutes later, there's another one. Trade offer. Decline that one. There's another one in 2 minutes. I'm like, how does he have these down on a piece of paper ready to go? What is going? Like the count, like you said, the activity, the counter offers, the feedback they give you, what they're looking for. They tell you we think you could use this running back. What do you like just little things like that? I'm already learning a lot, so I'm glad I joined.
Yeah. Memphis is such a good Dynasty manager, and so is everybody else in that GOAT District League.
And the worst thing is to get into a dynasty league where people are either afraid or unwilling to make trades, or so afraid of making a bad trade they just don't make any trades, and you're pretty much just building off of the draft, which at least year to year is kind of like a third of the way of making your team better. I mean, you need to be able to do free agent pickups, and you definitely want to do trades, and that's what makes a dynasty league fun. They don't do it, it's like a good way to think about joining a different league. So you kind of mentioned statistics, and I also looked into your background a little bit, and there was some mentioning of a company called FF Statistics LLC. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Obviously, it relates to statistics, but what were you, and maybe you're still doing it?
No, so that's actually the website I created that DLF then bought. So they bought out that and bought me with it. And some of the tools that are on DLF now were original FF Statistics tools. It was essentially a website that I wanted to compile fantasy football data, then create them into. I use a program called R and R Shiny. So that's what I was creating all of it in. Created a website based off of those tools, just to try to make fantasy football data more interesting or easier to access or easier to read and understand, while also, being actionable data. So I was creating that site in college. So that was like 2017 and 2018. And then sold that in 2019 to DLF then. And there's few that we brought on some writers, a few of which are still with DLF now. One guy went on to create his own fantasy football app. It's called the Walter Picks app. His name is Sam Factor. Yeah. So yeah. So he was part of the writing team as well. Peter Howard was part of the writing team. John Hesterman, Jeff Smith. Man, there's a few others that I'm kicking myself for forgetting. But yeah, that was a really fun time. That was my first go at trying to make it into the industry. And then when I sold it, I went part-time with DLF, just doing contractor stuff, and then that moved into YouTube. But after I sold it, I was like, no, maybe it's okay I don't do fantasy football full time. But that was really, really fun, and I learned a lot from that. And yeah, that old FF statistics stuff. I still have the logos for it on my computer. I still every now and then have the jingle for the podcast that we did. So it's a fun. Actually, I have a cup right here. Yeah, I have a cup right here, a mug.
Nice. All right. Thanks for sharing.
Mug.
And I didn't pose, kind of this question might be coming a little bit out of the blue, but statistics are really big in sports, obviously, sports analytics. And, down to the high school level now, they have sports analytics people just looking at optimal performance, player development, stuff like that. But right now, everyone's talking about AI and AI tools. Have you looked at leveraging AI tools to not only do the number crunching, but also for some level of output, whether it's recommendations or whether it's actual content?
Yeah, I think AI. Obviously, it's here to stay. I think it's seeped its way into everything, good or bad. Whether you want it to or not, and whether the AI content's good or not. I've seen some really good applications of AI, especially in the fantasy football space. It's a really good at helping you code some stuff. I know, for our company, we've used some AI to just be like, hey, make an HTML table of some of this, and then that gets thrown into an article. It's pretty easy to verify that the code is right and stuff. But it just shaves off so much time. We're starting to use some AI to now see if we can repurpose some of our regular YouTube videos into vertical shorts and reels and TikToks and all that kind of stuff. On the stats side of it, I don't know if if it's exactly ready just yet. I know when I was looking at it previously, some of the data that they were looking at was old. So like I remember one time I was just like, hey, give me like the top 12 rookie rankings for the year, and it gave me like 2025 or 2024 rankings, and then this was like a couple months ago. So I'm like, yeah, some of these guys, and then I would say specifically 2025, they gave me some 2026 guys that ended up staying in college, and that info was already very well known at the time. So it's I tried to do projections with it. Some of those projections I think were okay. I don't know. So like the AI stuff, I think it's only going to get better. And I think it already is making people's lives a lot easier. It's just, you just got to know when and where to apply it. And obviously authenticate everything that's coming out.
Yeah, because
the info's got to be proper. Like you said, you don't want it to be spitting out something that's outdated.
Yeah.
Right.
And so not only the input, but also AI tools are probably better with like, I don't know, language or written content, and not quite so accurate on numeric data. And so you have a greater risk of hallucinations. And so you're right in saying that they're getting there, still more to be done. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I also know that y'all have a Discord channel for Dynasty League football. Are you on that particular channel, and or do you participate, or mostly through Twitter and YouTube?
Yeah, I am. We technically have two Discord channels for DLF. One is the main DLF one that has, I don't even know how many people are in there now, a gazillion. Does it say how many people are? 4,400.
Wow.
So I am in there. I'm not that super active though. I branched out and I created my own Discord channel that's just DLF YouTube. So it's for a lot of the main people that watch the YouTube channel and stuff. So I am much more active in there. So if you're interested in getting into a Discord channel with me, I would join the DLF YouTube one rather than the main DLF one. But the main DLF one is still fantastic. Whenever I, poke my head in there and see what's going on, there's, people are talking left and right. There's 20 different channels. They're doing AMAs with like Ryan McDowell or anybody else like that. It's very, very active for sure. I just am not as active in there because I focus more on the YouTube side. But a lot of people still DM me on Twitter. I answer pretty much every comment that comes through on YouTube. So I'm very available. It's just maybe not like the actual main Discord channel for DLF.
You got it.
All right. So why don't you tell us about your involvement in Scott Fish? Have you drafted your team yet this year? Or are you part of a live draft? Give us all those details.
Yeah. We are, I think I literally just picked like an hour ago. I think we're at the 13-14 turn.
Nice.
In the Penn State division. So yeah, this is my, gosh, I don't even know. What was my first one? SFB 7 or 8. So I've been in that many Scott Fish Bowls since then. The first, I don't remember what number it was, but the theme was Disney characters. So I think that was 7. So I've been in Scott Fish every single year. Thankful for Scott for continuing to invite me. I've done pretty well. And then this year, hopefully I can continue doing well. Last year was the farthest I ever made it. I think I made it to the third round, like week 15 was the best I ever did before I got eliminated, injuries and whatnot. Didn't have another quarterback. So we'll see how the year goes on with this one, but I'm pretty happy with my team out of the 11 spot. I'm usually out of the 12 spot, but somebody beat me to it when they signed up for the Penn State division. They went in and got Penn State 12, and I was like, dang it. I've been in 12 spot for the past like 4 years in a row, so I had to pick 11. I don't mind it.
It didn't knock you off step, right? You're taking advantage of the third round reversal.
Yeah, that's the thing, and that's essentially since the third round reversal has been a thing for the past few years. That's when I've been picking the 12 spot, and it was Kyle Sopp. I think that's how you pronounce his last Sopp, SOPPE from Pro PFN. He took the 12 spot. So and he's taken a couple of my players so far at the term, but
I'm sure
That's
you
all right.
got them. I'm sure you got them a couple times. When it's coming from 1 through 12. Yeah.
He let me get
so-
H-Han at 202, so I'm grateful.
Ooh.
That must have been before the Johnu maneuver. Was it before then? Or
No,
No?
that was only a couple of days ago. He went double QB. He went Hurts Burrow.
Okay.
I went
So,
Jaden Daniels
yeah.
at the 111. He went Hurts Burrow. Then I got H-Han at the 202.
I drafted up in Dallas, and that was a couple of weeks ago. So I drafted Freiermuth, because we only could draft up to the 10 rounds. And then, of course, the trade happens the very next day, and I'm thinking,
The next day?
yeah, it was the day before the trade happened. We were drafting on a Sunday, and the trade happened that Monday. And it was just like, the people that were rushing to get Jonnu Smith, of course, they had this almost as bad of a look as I did, just knowing that Arthur Smith got us again. So
This is the advantages of picking at the ass end in the live Boston draft on July 20th. I don't have any.
Yeah.
I don't have any. I don't have any picks. I don't have any picks to tell you about. But it's nice. It's nice seeing everybody talk about their team. I'm part of the 104 chat. That thing is active like crazy. Everyone's talking about what their picks are. I get to see a lot of boards beforehand. Not that it matters because these drafts are all over the place all the time. But I get to have as much information as possible being at the end. So that helps. That helps a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you been to any live events? Any live?
I went to the Pittsburgh one last year. I decided not to go up this year. I went with a couple of my friends last year, and they were drafting in the Pittsburgh division. I did not volunteer to live draft in Pittsburgh because I wasn't sure because my son was born in the middle of June. Like he literally just turned 1 a couple weeks ago. So I wasn't sure where I would be and where my wife would be with the delivery and stuff like that and postpartum. So I didn't want to volunteer to like be a part of the live draft, but I ended up working out that I would just went and attended. And it was incredibly fun. So I wasn't able to go this year. But I would like to do another live draft. My ultimate hope is that I can get a live draft going in Penn State, and I would love to actually have it in Beaver Stadium, especially now because they're renovating it. They're adding box seats and stuff. Yep, I would like that. That's my ultimate goal. I would like to see if I can can help facilitate getting a live draft up here in State College and see if Scott can do that.
There you go. You guys hear that? Scott, Bob, John Bosch, who else is part of that team? Take notes, man. That's a pretty good idea. I like it, Addison. You said mid-June. What's the birth date? Because my birthday is the 14th.
13th.
Nice. Another June birthday to add to the list.
Yep.
Love it. The Fantasy Football Expo. Have you attended, and will you be attending this year?
I won't be attending this year. I got bit with another wedding. So last year I couldn't go because my sister got married. This year, one of my best friends is getting married. So we'll see what's going on next year, I guess. I think all of my friends are basically done getting married.
And they can't get married in Canton, huh?
I guess not.
Oh, they're not players.
But I have gone before. I actually went the first year. It was super fun. And then I went the year after the first year it opened up. It was 2021 after the pandemic because they didn't have it in 2020 because of the pandemic, but I went in 2021. So I've gone a couple of times. It's grown so much since then though. And so many more people are now going every single year that I'm itching to get back into there, but I'm at a different point in life now. And then weddings have killed me the past 2 years. So.
Yeah. Once you have that first kid, man, life changes forever. It's like that they would never. It's like that they were always there. Like you can't even remember what you did before you had them. Like it just everything. The whole like point of view of everything just shifts.
Yeah, so, but in a good way though too. I wouldn't give it up for the world.
No, of course not. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, mine are 31 and 26. And, I can remember the days of, going to this school or that school or, basketball games, choir, and I miss that. And so when they become adults and they move away, you really do miss those days where, little kid comes running down the hall screaming, "My daddy's home." So really enjoy that. Got a question for you, and I'm trying to figure out. I see a Dotson, and I know you're in Pennsylvania, so I'm thinking Philadelphia Eagles. But then I see a Godwin in the background too, so I'm trying to figure out if you, other than Penn State, if you have a favorite team.
Yeah, so those are both Penn State jerseys.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going through a phase where I would pick like one of my favorite NFL players, and then I would get their signed jersey off Pristine Auction. But then they kept switching teams. So I was like, you know what? You know who never switched teams? My former Penn State players that I love. So I'm just going to get the Penn State jersey, and they'll be good. But I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan because most of my family are also Steelers fans. So that's just the way that I gravitated to. But I have a lot of Eagles fans because especially being right in the middle of PA, you get both of them for sure. You get a little Ravens. There's some Ravens and Commanders guys in here too. In this area, maybe you'll even see like a Bill or something like that. But it's mostly, pick your. Are you team Philly or are you team Pittsburgh? And I went Pittsburgh for football for Steelers. What's up, Jamie?
Jamie's in the house. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the chat. If you guys are in here on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. If you're listening to us on X, when the show's over, just navigate yourself over to YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Definitely helps us out. We appreciate it. And I just wanted to throw that in there, Rick. Go ahead.
Great. And, one of the things, we mentioned Arthur Smith and, the acquisition of John S. Smith, but, what are your thoughts about the team this year, and what do you think their prospects are for the season and beyond?
Yeah, I've been an extremely pessimistic Steelers fan for about 5 years now. Because it was so depressing because everybody knew that Ben Roethlisberger was obviously going to retire at some point, and then we had like no plan for post Big Ben. I maybe it was Mason Rudolph. I've seen some people say that their plan was Dwayne Haskins, and then he passed away. And I'm like, boy, if Dwayne Haskins that we traded like a day 3 pick for because he wasn't good in Washington, if that was our plan post Big Ben, I've been extremely pessimistic. I've been on the side of we should have traded TJ Watt like 2 years ago. We needed to have tanked. As I've been on that side this whole entire time. I didn't want Aaron Rodgers. Now we have Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see how it goes. I'm starting to lean back into it. I don't know if this is just my Steelers fandom starting to come through that I'm like, maybe it could work. Maybe Aaron Rodgers can make it work. Maybe DK Metcalf can be a really good one. We'll have the running game. Obviously, the defense is going to be phenomenal. We got Jalen Ramsey now and don't have Minka. I was like, maybe it'll work. I don't know. I still think that in today's day and age, you need to have the offense and not the defense, or at least a little bit of, or at least both, like how Philly was last year. Because I don't even think we're the second best team in our own division, let alone being, a top 5 team in the AFC. And then
were you a little bit more optimistic when Fields was acquired and then pushed aside? No, not at all. and so with Rodgers, it's a 1 year. It's a 1 year. And then Will Howard, or what are your thoughts on quarterback after the Rodgers year is over?
Yeah, though that's the hard part, is because if I'm starting to buy into our prospects this year and we go 9-8, 10-6, lose in the first round of the playoffs, maybe we lose in the second round of the playoffs. We finally get a playoff win, but then we lose anyway to Baltimore or Buffalo or whoever. Then we'll be screwed for next year out of the quarterback class. It looks like it's going to be a good quarterback class. We got like a handful of guys. I'm personally really in on John Mateer, the new Oklahoma quarterback. So
love Mateer, yeah.
Yeah, depending on how he ends up doing, maybe he does push himself up to, like, I think he could be a Heisman Trophy winner this year, be like a top 3 pick next year. But maybe he kind of is just normal, and then we could get him in like the 20s, or maybe we have some good draft capital next year. So maybe we can move up to get him, or maybe it's Klubnik or Nussmeier, or it's a good enough quarterback class that I think there's going to be options, especially if we do trade up. Or maybe Aaron Rodgers does just suck, and then we end up being like 5-12 anyway. Then we're already there.
And if Sellers comes out, would you look at Sellers?
Yeah, I'm good with Sellers too. I'm pretty much good with everybody that's coming out next year. I am a little iffy on Drew Aller. I know I'm a Penn State fan, but I don't know about Drew Aller's transition to the NFL. We'll see how that goes. But I'm pretty much good with anybody if they take a first-round quarterback next year. I did not want Kenny Pickett at all. I wanted them to draft Jackson Dart this year. They passed on him. So
I was calling for Jackson Dart to go to Pittsburgh myself, and I'm no Steelers fan. I'm a Patriots fan, so the Steelers is probably the rival. So
yep. I hate the Patriots.
Everyone asks me, they're like, so the Bills and the Jets are a rival? I always think about it, and I go, no, it's probably Pittsburgh, because that's who we've come across the most when, during the Dynasty era for the Patriots. So.
Yeah. Yep. I hate New England. So I hate Ohio State, and I hate New England. And it's mostly because we can't, my teams are never good enough to beat those teams. Maybe it happened once or twice, but
not when it mattered the most, though. Yeah.
As a Texan fan, I'm quietly just enjoying life because nobody knows us, nobody hates us, but between the offense and defense, we should be up there with Baltimore to, contend for that this year. So,
All right. So now that we got through the personal fantasy background part of the show, we'll move on to the Dynasty football focus. How do you approach Dynasty football differently than redraft? What are your differences between the two?
Oh, I mean, the main difference is you get to keep your roster year over year. So that's pretty much the main difference between the two, and how you should play both of them is that you put more investment into the wide receiver position, specifically a little bit more investment into quarterbacks if it's super flex. I do treat running backs as if I were playing redraft. I don't really care about the age cliffs or anything like that, or be like, oh, I have to have my 22-year-old running back because then I'm going to have him for the next 4 or 5 years. Like, I don't really care about that. I've gotten to the point where I have told myself that I'm not going to basically roster these elite level running backs. And if I do, and if I fall into them as like rookies, that I won't have them for very long, because then I'll have traded them for wide receivers. That's basically my basic strategy for Dynasty is elite level wide receivers, fill in the gaps at running back, and move on from there. It's been pretty successful for me for the past couple of years. But that's basically the main difference is that, you go in with a more long-term approach, not too long-term. I do think some Dynasty managers can fall into that pitfall of playing too far away.
You want to try to win now, even in year one, correct? Right. Yeah.
Right. But I think a lot of people say, well, you either got to win now or you got to push for the future. And I think not enough people say and realize that you can do both simultaneously.
You mentioned running backs, and you mentioned running back as being kind of like, when you kind of, I don't want to say fade them, but you do focus more on wide receivers, I'm guessing, as your priority pick. How did you handle this particular year where it was considered to be more running back heavy? Wide receivers, there were only, 2, I think, that were considered first round picks. And so how did you approach? I mean, I'm guessing you were drafting towards the end of the first round anyway, but would you still have avoided, say, a Genty or Hampton or Judkins type player?
And rookie drafts or redrafts?
Yeah, rookie drafts, yeah.
Oh, I mean, rookie drafts, I'm not fading running backs in rookie drafts. I'm just looking to take the best player available. So if I had the opportunity to take Genty, I was like, Genty and Hampton were my 101 and 102 in my rankings for sure. And, I really like taking shots on Caleb Johnson, on Quinshon Judkins. I liked RJ Harvey ended up, I think, pricing himself out of my price range, even in rookie drafts still, just because of the hype of him going on day 2 to Denver. But yeah, it was, I mean, it was, I think a lot of rookie drafts, and this year was a good example of that. There are just, areas where this is a wide receiver area. This is a running back area. This is a spot where you could start talking about tight ends or start talking about some of the other quarterbacks if it's not like a top level guy. That usually happens a lot. I don't ever bypass running backs in the name of wide receivers. I'm just trying to take the best player available in rookie drafts. And so like last year, for example, was a little bit more complicated because you had like Jonathan Brooks was in there. He was my RB1 and like the late first area, but I loved Brian Thomas Jr. too.
Yeah.
So I was like, and it ended up being, it's weird because it's like BTJ is so high up here and now Brooks is so far down here that one decision was so crucial to your dynasty roster and value moving forward. But that was a tough one for me. And that one ended up being more team dependent in my opinion. Like, did you really need wide receivers or did you really need running backs? If you had equal need on both of them, take your shot, and hopefully you pick BTJ.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the way you answered the question was you were probably thinking more from a startup draft point of view. You would be focusing more on the top wide receivers versus running back. Then.
Yeah. Well, and a startup is definitely wide receivers, and in trades too. If I'm taking it over an orphan or already in an established league, I'm trading for wide receivers. I will do 2-for-1s at the wide receiver position. I will trade my wide receiver 2 that's like valued as like the wide receiver 20 and add a first to him and move up. I will trade, I've gotten a lot of hate in comments before this, just the past couple of months, of saying like I would trade Bijan, Genti, and Gibbs right now for Nico Collins and AJ Brown and Drake London, and people are like that's how into wide receivers I am, and not into running backs.
My argument would be, why wouldn't you want to at least keep one of those 3 running backs?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I have a couple of people that they're like, hey, I want to do your methodology, I want to do your strategy, but like, and I'm trying to move Gibbs for Puka, or I'm trying to move Bijan for Nico or Neighbors or anybody like that. And these guys just they're not taking the deals. They'd rather keep their wide receivers. Like, is that like a bad thing? And I'm like, well, no, it's not a bad thing. Like, you still have Bijan Robinson, you still have Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, they are inherently very great players. I don't value them as much as other fantasy players do, just because of the dynasty-ness of it all. I'd much rather have the elite level wide receiver and then work on running backs after that.
The lifelong value, I guess, in the asset value for wide receivers is definitely higher than running backs, even if you're talking about Bijan and Gibbs. Like right. You said, you approach running backs redraft style, so that means 1 year window. So if there's a veteran running back you're in a startup that's going like in the 8th, 9th round, you're okay relying on him for that 1 year because you're playing that year by year. So I kind of like that approach. It's an overall solid process in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's how I think people can build out startups rosters that are still very strong. Like, you still are built for the future, but you can still win now. As you can load up on your young wide receivers, grab a couple quarterbacks if you're in Superflex, find your tight end wherever. But if you're able to take the Alvin Kamaras and the Joe Mixons and the James Connors and all Tony Pollard, like all those kind of guys a little bit later, while everybody else is grabbing Bijan, Gibbs, Genti, Achane, Saquon, and Chase Brown and Bucky Irving and all those kind of guys like that, like let them do that. You get your wide receivers, and then you can, like I said, just fill in those running backs at the end. And at the end of the year, you probably end up doing better with your elite wide receivers and your boring but still productive RBs, rather than having elite running backs and your kind of like super inconsistent, Jalen Waddles and Jordan Addisons and stuff like
that. And
it
seems that's been a more successful approach, especially this year and last, where some of the older running backs were still productive. And you mentioned a number of them. Saquon's what, 28 now, 27?
I think, yeah, 28, I think.
And Mixon and
Aaron
even
Jones.
CMC might be in that category.
Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs. They're all up there in miles for sure.
And Connor for sure. Where people were drafting his backup Benson because for sure he's Connor's going to break down, and they saw Benson sit on the bench the entire year. So so if you're looking at that 1 year window in the running back position, even in a dynasty, these are the targets later in the draft you can get, while you early on focus in on the Chases and Jeffersons and certainly the Thomas Jr. and Neighbors and Collins.
I just wanted to add one more thing to that theory that the theory that we're talking about. Wide receiver, like star wide receivers, generally their role in their situation is pretty carved out for quite some time. Running backs situations can be fluid. They could be, they're on rookie contracts. Teams don't want to pay up. They move to another team. They're in a different situation. Teams are constantly drafting, rookie, even if they're third, fourth, fifth round rookie running backs, it's still somebody else entering the picture. And all it takes is for that starting running back to miss a couple games, and then the backups got their foot in the door. Maybe they played well, they earn a little bit of a role, and it's just enough to cut into what they had going on previous. So just the situations being more fluid for the running back, it the process totally makes sense.
Yeah, especially when you get lower, like Bijan, Gibbs, Genty, they're outliers. They're going to be phenomenal for many, many years. And even if they get hurt and the backups look like they do well, sorry, you're not Bijan Robinson. I know Tyler Algier is a really good running back. He's not Bijan Robinson, so they definitely have very well-defined roles. But, when you're talking about the back end of RB1 rankings, and then you get down into the RB2s and stuff, it really is just anybody's game at that point. People can have really high highs and then they just plummet down to the ground. Travis Etienne. I think of Antonio Gibson had started his career with 2 straight RB1 performances, and now he's dead. He's bed dead for a couple of years. And there are plenty of guys that are like that get, top 10 or top 12 dynasty value at the running back position. And in my opinion, from my experience, from what I've seen from a lot of those guys, is that they should be sold once they get into top 12 dynasty value, because it's really hard for them to continue going up, especially in today's NFL when you don't have as many workhorses. Teams are more willing to move on from you, especially if you do develop, a little bit of an injury bug or something like that. And teams are devaluing running back because of contracts. And it is, I think, especially harder to value guys and to keep guys on your roster that are valued that highly, when the alternative is you could just flip them over to a wide receiver whose team is so dependent on their production, and their roles are going to be, instilled in their offense, no matter the coordinators or the offense or the quarterbacks, for years and years and years. And then you're also giving yourself a floor of touches and opportunity at the wide receiver position that just not many other wide receivers are going to be able to attain. That it's a massive difference. May not seem like a difference on a individual week basis, but over the course of 17 weeks, that's huge.
So while we're talking about trades, why don't you give us your approach and any advice you give people new to Dynasty regarding making successful trades? I know you already broke down the 2-for-1s. One thing I like to do is try to get the best player that's in the trade. So
sure.
outside of that, I'll let you share your thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely, it's into my personal strategy, but I'm very okay doing 2-for-1s at the wide receiver position, leaning out that position. So I will trade, I'll trade Chris Olave and Jameson Williams and just give me Nico Collins. I'd rather just have one Nico over those other 2 guys. That's a very specific thing to my strategy. I will say, I think the one thing, a couple things actually, for trading, especially if you're new to Dynasty, is don't feel like you have to win every single deal. I feel like that's a major issue that a lot of, especially new dynasty managers, fall into. But they feel like they have to win every single trade, and I think that's going to kill your relationships with other league mates in your league, to then have future negotiations. And it's not to say that you like purposely make bad deals, but like you don't have to equal out everything every single time. It doesn't have to be like, hey, I think I think you need to give me a third and I'll give you a fourth. I think you need to throw in a fourth or something like that. It's like that's
Yeah.
just hit accept, dude. If you think
Amen.
the deal's there, just hit accept. I think that's a major issue, especially with some people that are new to Dynasty that don't necessarily have the experience or understand the game as much. The other one that I think needs that could be very helpful to a lot of people is not to get infatuated with buying one specific player, but rather to buy a type of a player. I think that's a big thing when you're looking at running backs, especially. A lot of people will say, hey, I need an RB2, and they'll like lock in on Derrick Henry. I've got to buy Derrick Henry because he's cheap, but he's amazing. And it's like, well, he might not be super cheap. Or they say, I need a running back. And for some reason, they're like, all right, I need Devon Achane. Well, why do you need Devon Achane? You just said you needed a running back. So why don't you just cast a wider net, see which teams in your league would even be willing to move off of a running back. Look at the direction that they're heading in. If they're competing, they probably don't want to move their older guys. If this team might be rebuilding or more in the middle, they might be interested. If you have an excess of wide receivers and you're looking for a running back, look for teams that maybe have an excess of running backs but need some wide receivers. They'll make good trade partners. From there, you start to identify which players are even available for you to even trade for. And then from there, you determine, can you even afford those guys? And if you can't, like you're like, I don't have any first. Well, then, sorry, you can't buy Bucky Irving unless you're willing to trade one of your other good players. And it's like, all right, I just had the second. And from these teams, I'm able to see, hey, I might be able to get Brian Robinson, might be able to get Tony Pollard. I might be able to get David Montgomery, and I'll make some offers for each one of those guys. I don't really necessarily care which, but I'll just see if I can get one of them for a little bit cheaper, or maybe I can get a throw in on one of these guys as well for that second. And we'll see kind of how these negotiations go. But I think understanding how to even identify a trade partner and not lock in on a certain player, but a certain type of player that fits within your budget, essentially, on what you're trying to pay, I think is one of the best ways to get more deals done.
Yeah, I love that advice, especially the idea of, one, not feeling like you have to win every trade. You see people tweet out all the trades they've already made and saying, what do you think? Did I win the trade? And, that's not the point of trades. The point is to make yourself a better team, more successful over the long run. And so I even think the idea of, yes, early on in a league, especially you're trying to get to learn the other owners or other managers in the league, you might end up taking a small trade, and you may not even win but it's a small trade where you're just trying to develop the relationship, and then later you can go back and try for a bigger trade. But I think that's great advice. I know one thing that I've been curious about, and I know, I tend to use them. Some people don't. They, think that you're wrong if you bring up one of these. But what are your thoughts on trade value charts and on trade calculators? And I know Dynasty League Football offers both, but it was what your thoughts are, and then any best practices or advice you would give to how to use them more successfully.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place in the game of Dynasty for trade calculators and stuff like that. I even use calculators when I'm making deals in my own leagues and stuff too, just to double check. Like I just want to make sure like I'm not crazy or I'm not offering something ridiculous where this other person might feel insulted, or maybe I'm not getting proper value back even on my end, where I'm like, I would do this deal, but could I get more? Like, do people think you should be able to get more? So there is definitely a place, I think, for trade calculators, but at the end of the day, they are just tools, right? Like they're a tool in your tool belt that can be utilized, and if you know how to use them correctly, can be used really well, but they're not like the end all be all. Like I think the people that screenshot trade calculator results and throw them into your negotiations and they're like, see, like, this is why you should do this deal because this trade calculator says that you win, or this is why I'm rejecting this deal because this trade calculator says that, you're off by the 303. So I want your 303. And that kind of goes back to the whole, like, don't feel like you have to win every single trade and stuff like that. So I do think trade calculators can be useful, can be very helpful, especially for new players to make sure that you're not getting swindled on a deal that somebody offered you or the one that you're offering yourself. But that those trade calculators and the values are created based on a consensus where, like, the consensus is averages of some players that are higher than or lower than these players. And that's how an average is obviously created. So you're going to run into people that are higher on a certain player or that are lower on a certain player. And every league is its own market. And if you're only trading with one person in your league who has that one specific player. So just because, 10 people tell you that you should be able to get, the 2.04 or you should be able to trade the 2.04 for Tyreek Hill. Well, if that person thinks that you should, he's like, I wouldn't trade him that low. I would trade him for the 111 is the lowest I can do. Well, you're dumb for doing that because these other 9 people. No, he's not dumb. It's just you happen to run into one person who, he just likes it a little bit more. So,
and the other thing that calculators don't seem to get or aren't able to provide is the context, the situation within a particular deal. And so if
right.
the calculator may say it's a bad trade, but for you to build out your team, that trade still makes sense for you. And so I think that and as I mentioned, or developing that relationship for a future deal down the road.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I just want to add, if I use the trade calculator, I use it as like a baseline, see where I can get started when I try to come up with a trade. I love that you brought up the point that it's what goes back to the point where you don't have to win every trade. This is where I think trade calculators can sometimes get you in trouble. Because I'll give an example. I made a trade last offseason. I forget exactly when during the offseason. It might have been before the NFL draft. I traded Ramondre Stevenson in a third round in a 2024 third, or 2025 third, and I got back Chase Brown and a 2025 second. Okay, by the trade calculator, I was losing. Yeah, it was a huge trade for me. But the trade calculator showed me losing, not by a lot, but this third second swap helped out the helped balance it out. But if I was to really be religious with the trade calculator, I'd have been like, I don't think I can offer this trade. This isn't just and I would have missed out on a Ramondre Chase Brown flip. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that, when you lose a trade, you could still win a trade.
Sure.
You don't know
it's a snapshot in time as opposed to, down the road this season, that player is going to develop and get, and the calculators will eventually track that increased value. But at that moment that you're discussing or considering a trade,
right,
it's not. So that's a great point. Hey, Addison, do you have a few more minutes to talk about specific players?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, awesome. So the first question, I guess, is kind of an obvious one. What players are you more into, or which players do you like more than their current ADPs?
Are we talking Dynasty still, Rick? I just want to specify. Yeah, okay.
I love Dynasty. I'm in one redraft, and it's Scott Fishbowl. So
context is everything for the listeners. So
yeah. So from a Dynasty standpoint, and obviously on the DLF YouTube channel when I'm making content, all the best videos are always the, here's my favorite buys and stuff like that. So those those get made pretty consistently throughout the year. So when I'm looking at, I just posted like a buy these running backs to win your league in 2025 video. That was the fun title that I threw on there for YouTube. And then there's another one from May, the 7 best buys in Dynasty right now. To throw out a couple of the names that I threw in both of those. Again, to go back to the whole, my strategy is build up my wide receiver core, then fill in my running backs. I love me every single running back on keep trade cut from like RB 18 down to like RB 30, like every single one of them. And doesn't matter really which one. It's just which one are you more into? Which one are you more willing to spend up? If you are willing to spend up for like a Chuba Hubbard or Christian McCaffrey's like down in that range now. So if you can buy CMC for that kind of a price point, I would love it. But I also love Tony Pollard. I love James Conner. I love Aaron Jones. I am kind of in on DeAndre Swift this year just because it's like, who else is going to run the ball back there? And he's going to be super cheap. So, if you need a guy, go for it. A few other running back names, in that kind of same range: Kamara, Mixon, Monty, Brian Robinson, like all those guys. At the wide receiver position, I'm pretty big into Juwan Jennings. I'm pretty big into. I was editing a video today that's going to come out in a couple of days, and it's DJ Moore as a buy. Everybody knows me. I'm a huge Kyle Williams fan on the DLF YouTube channel, rookie for the New England Patriots. And I'm trying to think who else.
I was
Brock
to say,
Purdy.
You said Kyle Williams, and you also earlier said John Mateer. So you must have been seeing them in Washington State, and those are.
Kyle Williams is definitely smooth, and he's going to be real good. I'm kind of afraid of his year one production. I don't think he's going to hit his peak right away, but
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I personally think he's this year's Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
Not to say that like BTJ hit his peak this year, because obviously he can continue on being great. And I don't even know if Kyle Williams is going to do what BTJ did. Like, what do he have, like 1,200 yards and like 10 touchdowns or something like that?
That's what I'm talking about. He's not going to have that spike season in year one. Because I know how New England offense is. I know how Josh McDaniel, they got 2 running backs. Ramondre's not going anywhere. I don't think he's just going to get pushed to the bench because Trevion's there. Trevion, is part of the committee last year. I don't think he's a workhorse back. So, and he likes to work in those guys. And Hunter Henry was the favorite target for Drake May last year. I still think that he's going to have a solid year. So I just think that his, maybe in the second half of the year, or if Diggs gets injured and now he's playing the full wide receiver 1 role, maybe he has a chance at that point. But there's just a lot of variables that I think his year 1 breakout might not happen.
Yeah, breakout. I don't think, but I think a second half kind of thing, definitely kind of like what we saw from Rashee Rice a couple years ago, or like Amon-Ra St. Brown in 2021. BTJ's second half was pretty phenomenal, even without Trevor Lawrence. But BTJ just started out so hot as well. But he did get better over the second half of the year. And maybe Kyle Williams doesn't like start out electric just because he is a rookie. It is the Patriots offense. He's behind a really good veteran in Stephon Diggs, who knows his way around the NFL and DBs and just offenses in general. But I think, as the year goes on, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle Williams starts getting more and more work and maybe even supersedes Diggs on some stuff. Kind of like what A.J. Brown did in Tennessee, in kind of a similar, or at least under Vrabel. That could kind of be a very similar thing for Kyle Williams. I was sniped on him and Scott Fishbowl. That I was going to take him with my pick that was literally like an hour and a half ago. I was so ready for it. He was in my queue, and the guy right before me took him, and I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I've been a massive Kyle Williams fan.
Was it the 12 spot guy that we were talking about earlier?
No, this was on this. So this was the 10 spot guy on the way into me, and he took
getting it on both ends. I hate that.
Yep, but I'm expecting big things from Kyle Williams, and hopefully I'm right. Because if I'm wrong, I'm screwed in so many. I have him everywhere.
Nice. So what players are you fading, or not so much fading, but you might be down on? Because I always say, once value presents itself, you're drafting a guy that you don't like. So not necessarily fading, but just give us some guys that you just not take it. You might not take in a startup, or you're not looking to buy. You might be looking to sell more so.
Sure. Yeah. From a sell standpoint, just consensus values that I see that I think are a little bit too high. Garrett Wilson comes to mind. I just don't believe in the year that he's going to have with Justin Fields. Coming from somebody who watched Justin Fields play in 6 games with the Steelers, and then obviously watched him play in Chicago, he's not a good quarterback. And I think Garrett Wilson still has really high expectations, especially with the whole they played at Ohio State together, and Fields was the one that unlocked DJ Moore. I think we're translating that over to Garrett Wilson still. And I think he's still just a little bit too high, and not much different than a lot of names that are behind him for much cheaper. Similar to that, sorry, Rick, but I think CJ Stroud is still a little bit too overvalued.
No, I didn't draft him in my Scott Fishbowl, so I took Lawrence over him. So,
okay.
I'm not blind to the players on my team. So,
I love me some Nico Collins.
What a sell CJ. He was last year. If you sold CJ Stroud last year, oof, you got some good return, I bet.
And in fairness, the offensive line was horrible. Lost Tank Dell. Nico was out for a while. Diggs went out right away. I mean, there was some reasons behind, and I think of all that, I think CJ was probably most affected by Tank Dell injury, because I think they were close, developed a good relationship, and then seeing that horrible injury on the field, it looked like the win. All the win came out of CJ's sales that year. But given all that, he's just a passing quarterback. The offensive line wasn't improved that much. I think Higgins is a good addition, and Noel as well, but and Kirk. I mean, so I could see some reason for optimism with CJ, but as I said, I also didn't draft him when I had the chance. And
yeah, he's still a top 10 quarterback on Keep Trade Cut, and I'm just like why?
That first rookie year was just swaying too many people.
I guess so.
We got a question.
Caleb Williams here.
Yep. Yeah. There we go. Okay.
As for Caleb, his value is still kind of high even in Dynasty, but I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on that one. I think that Ben Johnson can do a lot of really good things for Caleb immediately. Obviously, they upgraded their offensive line massively, which was one of the biggest issues that Caleb had last year, was either he's not having enough time to throw, or because of how much he's been pressured, he thinks he has less time to throw than he actually does. He's got all these back foot throws that he just tosses up to Rome Odunze, that led to Odunze's horrendous catchable pass percentage last year. So I think I am drinking the Kool-Aid on Caleb Williams. I think I have him as my QB 7. He's behind the top 3 or 4, and then there's Burrow at 5, and Mahomes and Herbert are up there. So he's in the 7 or 8 range, I think, for Dynasty. I don't know if it's going to be 2025 is the year, but I think we see massive improvements from Caleb Williams this year, to where maybe he doesn't live up to a QB 7 or 8 fantasy rank in 2025. But again, it's Dynasty, so you're still projecting forward a little bit with some of those rankings for these young guys, that he'll just continue to grow in this Ben Johnson offense with all the weapons that they also just added. I am drinking the Kool-Aid on that one a little bit for Dynasty. I think a back end top 12 performance is a pretty easy projection.
And are you dragging, but does that also bring Rome Odunze up in the process? Or are you thinking Burden and Loveland and still too many targets.
For Dynasty, I'm targeting Loveland out of all of them, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
Loveland is really good. He was my rookie tight end 1 over Tyler Warren from Penn State. So I still really liked Loveland a lot. And I think he's going to be, he's so much better than Cole Kmet in like every facet of the game, essentially. My fear is that there's still a little bit too many targets to go around. I think Odunze is obviously going to have the clear lead in snap percentage over Luther Burden still. And especially if they are running 12 personnel, to have both Loveland and Kmet out. I think Burden's the odd man out in those personnel packages. And it's DJ Moore and Odunze. So Odunze, I think, should have a good snap percentage, and then we would hope that he would have a good like targets per route run on that one. But I'm still a little iffy on Odunze. I don't know if he's going to have like the breakout like we saw with JSN in year 2 without Shane Waldron. I don't know if Odunze is going to have that because I do think DJ Moore is still very much their wide receiver 1. I do think that Loveland is very, very good and is a very good target over the middle of the field too. Odunze will have moments for sure, but I think it's going to be pretty up and down, and maybe he's a solid like wide receiver 25-ish or something like that. But I think it's when people are projecting him to be like, this dude could be top 12. I think he could be, but I don't. I think there's more hurdles there than people are necessarily ready to see or admit.
Yeah, I think Matt Harmon's all green spider chart that was, everyone was like, "Oh, this guy's going to be the next big thing," and then of course,
he completely dominated in college. His numbers were absurd. Yeah, so I mean, it's to be expected, but like, he's part of an offense now that has a lot of cogs and weapons. So. And I'm with you, Addison. DJ Moore is ridiculously good. Like, there's no reason why people should be down on him. His yards after the catch every year is consistently near the top of the chart. So what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Sorry. But I hate when that happens. Mm-hmm. I'm like preparing the next question and answering a question at the same time. I'm still getting used to doing all of that. But no, DJ Moore and Ben Johnson, that's where I was going with it. Ben Johnson is going to find a way to get the ball in his hands, with some space so he can do what he does with the ball in his hands. Like I see him having a bet, he's going in. And, we're talking Dynasty, but if this year he's going like 4th round, back end of the 4th round in redraft, and I think he's going to way crush that draft, that ADP as far as results go.
Is he even that high? I thought for some reason he was like a 5th round.
Well, yeah, I mean, I draft high stakes, so just a little bit sharper people will push him up, the ones who like him, who are truth is and know that he is that talented.
Okay. Fantasy Pros ADP has him at 40 overall in PPR league. So yeah, that's mid 4th.
Yeah.
I'm still in on that though too.
Yeah. He beats that out. I think that's a good spot. Yeah.
And you mentioned, and we'll only spend a second or two because most dynasty leagues have already done their rookie drafts, but and you mentioned Kyle Williams as being one of the rookie wide receivers that you are pretty high on. Are there any other rookies that you're, higher than, either ADP or where most people are taking them?
I would say I'm a pretty big fan of a lot of the wide receivers in that early to mid 2nd round rookie range, where it was Jaden Higgins, Trey Harris. Then I vaulted Kyle Williams up into there, which I know a lot of the community did not have Kyle Williams up that high. They view him more as a late to maybe back end mid, like 207 and on in the 2nd round. I've seen some people get Kyle Williams in the 3rd round. I'm like, that is insane.
Right.
crazy value.
I took him at 204 in one rookie draft.
Yeah, that's about the sweet spot for me, was whenever I start looking at, like, I'll take Jaden Higgins and Trey Harris first, because I think that they were maybe not better prospects, but they have the draft capital investment a little bit higher, and maybe a better situation with Stroud and with Justin Herbert, rather than, like, I like Drake May a lot, but we'll see how New England's offense goes moving forward and stuff like that. But I do really, really believe in Kyle Williams. But I also really believe in Trey Harris and Jaden Higgins.
And here's
Caleb
the danger
is
of
another
early
one.
drafts, because I was all over Jack Besh, drafting him like crazy, and he was before, typically taken before Kyle Williams. But then, of course, we see OTAs and we see some of the early, draft or practice, depth charts, and all of a sudden Thornton's in front of him. So, which they're different positions, different players, but still, if I was having a rookie draft now, I wouldn't be drafting Jack Besh as often or as much as I did early in the year. Are there any of the players you're kind of avoiding?
Besh was one that I was avoiding. I didn't like the profile all that much, and I was kind of happy that he went in the second round of the NFL, because I was like, might get propped up, and then I get somebody else that I enjoy a little bit more. So I was kind of avoiding Jack Besh. Matthew Golden is the big one. I know he's like the most polarizing player in the entire class. I'm team fade Matthew Golden on that one. So we'll see how that ends up going. Especially when you take a stance that hard on a player, you're just like, nope. And sometimes it works, and nobody gives you any credit for it when it works, but when it doesn't work, that's when everybody comes back and laughs at your face. So
I think his landing spot kind of was terrible. And now I know that Green Bay doesn't have a clear-cut wide receiver one, but to have 4 or 5 guys in the 70 to 80 target range is just awful for fantasy football. I think that, they're not going to use him the way they should use him. The way Green Bay uses their offense, they've run a little bit more than they should. Now, I know that they went run heavy last year down the stretch because Jordan Love was banged up, and their season was kind of a lost. It was, you know what I mean? So, maybe they don't run as much this year. They open it up a little bit more. But I actually think that the pass catcher for Green Bay that's going to benefit from things opening up is going to be actually the tight end, Tucker Kraft. I see him taking a step forward targets. I don't necessarily think they're going to use Golden as an alpha, even though he maybe could be an alpha. You know what I mean? So that's kind of same thing with Besh. I think in order for Besh to blossom, Jacoby Myers has to be out of the picture. He's just in the pecking order. He's entering a pecking order. He's down at the bottom of the totem pole, like Rick said. You saw that chart they put out, and now everyone's like, maybe I shouldn't have took Besh at 2-3, or 2-4. But it's just the situation for me with Matthew Golden. I think he could have found a better spot, and he, it was unfortunate he landed where he did.
Yeah, I guess the one attraction to him was that, he's basically taking the Watson role or Watson spot, and Watson's out. Although I guess I heard that he's actually running already. So I don't know if that translates to playing, but and you're right. They have way too many wide receivers. You got Romeo, you got Wicks, you got
Jaden
Reed, and so now all of a sudden there's 4 people splitting up all those targets along with Kraft and Jones. There's hard to develop into a wide receiver one when you're in such a packed target grouping. So, but we'll see. Plus, he went to Texas, so
can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, he went to Houston first, didn't he? Didn't he go to U of H? I think he started there.
Yeah, and then he transferred to University.
Then he transferred.
Right.
Yeah, because he was behind Tank Dell as a freshman. if I remember correctly.
And Texas receivers too. They had the other guy who ended up not even getting drafted. The guy that said he was going to run like
Isaiah Bond.
Yeah.
He said he was going to break Worthy's record and then ran a 4.4.
Yeah. Although it's crazy that, if you're in a deep enough league, shoot, that's worth a dart, because, he might, develop into something. So, but undrafted.
All right. So this has been a great show, guys. Addison, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it. Why don't you remind the audience where they can find your work?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate you guys asking me to come on. This is super fun. Glad we were able to dive into some Dynasty, some specific players. You can find my work, mostly like 98% of my work is on the DLF YouTube channel. Although we are starting content on the 4for4 channel as well, because we're like sister sites for Redraft and Dynasty. So Redraft season's coming up, so I'll be contributing over on 4for4 as well. But it's all YouTube, DLF and 4for4. Not as involved on Twitter, X. I'm still not used to calling it X yet, but
I know
it's Maze Hayes _ over on X, but YouTube channel, DLF and 4for4 YouTube channels.
Awesome. Again, appreciate all your insights on Dynasty. Tons of good advice in this one. Next week, you can join Rick and maybe not I. I'm going to be on vacation next week. We're taking the kids to Hershey Park in Pennsylvania. I'm going to be driving home Thursday afternoon, and I know it's about a 6.5 hour drive for me. So it's going to be close. Hopefully, next week's guest, Cuda Doodle, can push back her time, the start time a little bit. Otherwise, you might be getting Rick and a fill-in co-host. But that's definitely going to be a good show. I believe it's Thursday Checkdown's 100th episode, which is another reason why I'm kicking myself in the ass for planning a vacation during this week. But, when it comes to family vacations, there's only so many weeks that you can pick from. So that work for everybody. So looking forward to that next week. If I'm not here, I'll definitely be in the car listening, Rick. So if I'm not here, I hope you enjoy that show, man. Also, keep an eye out for more great shows on the Sports Affiliation YouTube channel. Friday, that's tomorrow. Tomorrow night, Carla will be given a brief rundown live. She's going to do it live for her new Zumba show. She's going to have Zumba teachers and students on. She is a Zumba instructor, and they're going to be discussing what that brings to the table, what it does for them physically, mentally, all the good vibe stuff. It's a good vibe show. She's excited to get it going. I helped her, helped her out how to get it started up, how to create the show. She's really excited about it, so we're looking forward to that as well. That's it. That's really it. Rick, you got anything else you want to add?
Yeah, Tuesday night, we're going to have the
show. Yeah.
And our guest is going to be a very special guest for us. We're going to have Austin Ekeler, running back from the Washington Commanders, talk about his foundation, the Austin Ekeler Foundation, as well as some charity fantasy football leagues that they host and that they're promoting during the course of the year. So I hope you all do get a chance to watch on Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll learn a little bit more about Austin Ekeler, the player, his foundation, and all the charitable activities they do. So looking forward to that, and hope you get a chance to watch.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to crashing the studio before the show starts, just to say hello to him and meet him briefly and, thank him for coming on for sure. Definitely going to be a good show, Rick. I'm excited for you for that one, man. But I guess that's it. We're going to get out of here. Addison, thank you again, man. Rick, awesome show. Thank you to the chat. again, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We appreciate all of that. Everybody, have a good night.